When does self-transformation stop being growth and become a form of running? This thought process came up to me recently because I saw a Threads post that was talking about how the self-development spiritual community is constantly pushing a narrative about rebranding, re-identifying ourselves, reinventing, etc. I'm sure we are all very familiar with the reinvention jargon. But what if the constant feeling that you need to transform yourself in some way has become your way of running from your true self and what actually matters to you without you realizing it? Hola, my beautiful dreamers. Welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Marisa LaBlue, and I mix everything cosmic advice with everything self-development to become our dream selves every day. If that sounds like something you're interested in, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell. That way you don't miss future videos like this one. And you can follow me on social media platforms where I upload more astrology, spirituality, and lifestyle content. I feel like this constant external push to pursue something other than ourselves or reinvent ourselves, rebrand, this constant almost commodification of who we actually are starts to put us into a dissociated, distracted state of flight, or maybe even freeze, where we don't know what to do with ourselves and we kind of try to go on this journey of reinventing ourselves and then we freeze up. Because of that, people are falling out of touch with their spirit and their true self and trying to constantly pursue things outside of themselves. This can be in something as trivial as buying clothes that don't resonate with you because an influencer told you to buy them, to something as extreme as being part of a group that does not resonate with who you are and is inhumane. But our society has been set up to constantly steer you from who you actually are. And that's a dangerous game to play because that is one of the ways that our world steers us in a direction that fits the narrative they want rather than the narrative that actually makes you happy and makes you fulfilled. No amount of constant transformation is going to make you feel seen or fulfilled if you don't actually know yourself and you're always looking to the external to try and know yourself or feel fulfilled. First, I want to touch on the idea of evolution versus escape or escapism. And the reason I wanted to bring up this topic is there's a lot going on in the world right now. And originally I was going to upload the Virgo Sun video today, which is part of the Sun Sign series, but it just felt too misaligned and too ignorant of what is currently rapidly taking place, especially if you're here in the United States and you know what I'm talking about. However, I don't like to stand on the side of fear. I think fear as a standalone emotion is negative. It's not powerful. It needs to be transmuted. When it's transmuted, it can be powerful. So I never want us to ruminate in fear, even though our fear and our anxiety and our nervousness is very much validated. It's very much understandable. But I do want to make sure that I'm continuing to promote transmutation of that. And that is the goal of the video today, is to talk about something that is more deep-rooted within us all. And the things that we're seeing happen are one of the many physical manifestations of something our society has conditioned us to be, which is people that are constantly running from ourselves and don't actually know who we are. So we place so much external weight on things outside of ourselves. We place so much weight on this political figure, this celebrity, this influencer, external events, and we have no idea anymore how to self-regulate, how to return to ourselves, because we don't even know ourselves because the world has steered us so far away from that. That is one of the most dangerous places for us to be. So I want this video to be not only relevant to the energy we're experiencing on a collective at the moment, but also somewhat positive and reinforcing as much as it can be without being ignorant to what is happening. If you're watching on YouTube, sorry for the change in camera quality. Apparently the memory card on my official camera is broken. I don't know. I'm gonna have to deal with that later, but I digress. First, I want to talk about the meaning of real evolution versus escapism and when self-evolution turns into escapism. Real transformation begins with integrating your shadow and integrating who you are not running from it. When you are undergoing healthy growth, it does not feel self-abandoning. It does not feel like you're lying to yourself or you're forcing yourself or rushing yourself into something that is not resonant. Don't get me wrong, healthy growth can and probably will feel wildly uncomfortable, especially at first. That is just how growth works. Growth always comes with some type of tension or friction that is necessary for you to grow into what you're becoming. That's why I love the phrase no mud, no lotus, because lotuses grow through the mud. But a lot of people are confusing discomfort with misalignment and feeling the need to totally reinvent who they are and their lives because they feel like they went wrong. They're taking that discomfort as I went wrong somewhere along the way here, and now I need to totally abandon this and start anew. You're essentially running from your own truth. Not every uncomfortable season means that you're doing something wrong or that you need to totally reinvent and rebrand and once again leave a part of you behind that actually needs to be integrated, not removed. On the topic of evolution versus escapism, I want to emphasize that the tools we use to develop ourselves are not the problem. It's the intention we have when we use them that could be the problem. Take astrology, for example. Astrology is my favorite way to teach people how to develop themselves, but not only develop yourself positively, but really get to know who you are in the first place. Astrology is definitely a beautiful divine roadmap, and it can be comparable to so many other self-development tools that you can use. All these self-development tools are amazing, and they can clarify your path, especially when you're feeling lost. These tools are just that, maps. They are maps that you can use to help see your path. However, the map does not show you the specific obstacles or disruptions awaiting you on that path. Those are the things that astrology cannot necessarily prime you for. No amount of overanalyzing your astrological placements or some other self-development avenue can actually prime you on a deeper internal level for what is to come. Because you are going to face obstacles that are not predictable, that are going to potentially throw you off course, bring you farther away from yourself. And it's up to you to fortify your spirit to actually be ready and primed for those disruptions. Part of the magic of becoming your most fulfilled self is having the audacity to walk your divine path as you are and to be with yourself as you are in every moment along that path. With all that being said, it begs the question of what are we really searching for? What is it underneath the transformation that you're looking for? What is the reason you are endlessly searching to reinvent and transform? Are you running from a past version of yourself or the version of yourself as you are? Why is it that you are in a constant state of reinvention and you feel rushed to get to this certain idealized version of yourself when we are going to experience so many versions of ourselves in this lifetime? Whether we want to hear it or not, the version of ourselves that we tend to try and outrun, whether we realize we're doing it or not, is the one asking to be understood. But I want to tie this into something much greater. When it comes to self-development, we often talk about ourselves, but we don't really talk about the true danger of trying to escape ourselves versus actually knowing who we are and sitting with ourselves in every present moment. When we can't even sit with who we are, and when we don't even know who we are to sit with, fear is able to seep into our hearts and our energy so much more potently and bleed outwards, creating an emotional state in the world that is easier to manipulate and influence. This is the extreme dark side of where the world leads us to when we are constantly being pulled by external pursuits and away from ourselves, being flooded with so much external noise that we are being moved away from ourselves constantly. In saying this, I am not trying to underestimate the magnitude of what we are experiencing and the reality of what we are experiencing, not just globally, but specifically in the United States. However, this is something that I feel needs to be said in this video to really make us realize the importance of what I am conveying to you in this message. What we are experiencing right now is real. The pain is real. The actions are real. All of it is real, and it should not be taken lightly. And we need to be aware of that. However, what is also real about the situation is that certain things are being incited, agitated, and staged to exacerbate our feeling of fear, our feeling of anxiety, of tension, of anger, because that fuels this evil energy that we are being steered into. A world of individuals that truly know who they are. They know how to emotionally regulate. They know how to rejuvenate. They are in touch with their spirit. Their spirit is fortified, and they know what real faith feels like. That is the most dangerous form of a human. But when they can keep people constantly removed from themselves and keep them escalated in fear, anger, and exhaustion, now they have all of us where they want us. I saw a video of someone with a megaphone, a young man with a megaphone, standing in front of a bunch of ICE agents, and he was screaming a bunch of white supremacist stuff to the crowd of peaceful protesters, and he was getting some of the protesters riled up. But there was a woman who was part of the protesters who was telling everybody, she was like, don't listen to him, don't give him attention, don't feed into the energy, because he is literally trying to just agitate you. That is what he's doing. There are people who are paid to go out there and agitate a crowd. I'm pretty sure that the enforcement agents are being told to purposely escalate every interaction, which is why they are being given immunity even when caught on tape. What is staged and fits a narrative is the actions we see happening on the enforcement side of everything. The reason this is important for us to realize is because a lot of what we see in this world is orchestrated to steer our energy away from ourselves and into a pathway that is not ours to live. It's somebody else's that they want us to live in so they can benefit from it in some way. This is definitely a form of evil energy use, or evil spell casting, if you will. Evil intention on the extreme level. This evil spell casting, evil intention is trying to attack you from the inside out, because if something can grab onto you from the inside out, it has the biggest amount of control over you. This is why I find that religion is one of the most dangerous paths for people to get manipulated if their spirit and their sense of discernment is not properly fortified. Religion itself doesn't have to be something evil, but people have consistently used it as the most powerful manipulative tool. Why? Because religion directly affects the spirit, and the spirit is the most powerful thing that we have. Once someone has a hold of your spirit, you are that much easier to energetically manipulate and steer. The world that we live in tries to prime you for this type of evil engineering, evil energetic engineering, by stealing the autonomy you have over your own soul and your own mind. If you feel helpless, powerless, and like you don't know what to do, reconnecting to your spirit and your mind will always be the single most powerful thing that you can possibly do in your lifetime, especially as we progress in the era of social media and technology. These are both things the world consistently tries to attack and gain control over, so you lose control. The point of this topic was not to make you feel overwhelmed, and it was also not to oversimplify the complexity of what's happening to us right now collectively. I want to leave you with at least a few simple, accessible ways to anchor yourself with what is currently happening. And these are things I do with myself as well. So number one is to create moments of stillness with yourself without judgment or urgency. When you think about it, the world is constantly filling your mind and your spirit with excess noise and information. We rarely ever have a moment to stop and not think about what to do, what not to do, how to take action, how to do this, how you're doing this wrong, do this right, do this skincare, not this skincare, eat this, not that. It is incredibly overwhelming. I know stillness sounds very cliche and probably an overused term in the self-development spiritual space. The more that a term is used, the more we tend to move away from how powerful it really is, and we tend to normalize it or oversimplify it. But you must fortify your spirit through stillness. I want to share this little excerpt from this article regarding Buddhism and the act of stillness, and I'll leave the link for this article in the description if you want to read it for yourself. But this is what it said about stillness. Stillness is supported by solitude, silence, and simplicity. These three are touted in most, if not all, religions as necessary for deep practice and for deep communion, for the mystical experience. It is delusion to think we can circumvent them if we yearn for anything more than intellectual understanding. They are very hard to find in the modern world. Solitude. This is, of course, about being alone. Not lonely, but alone. Physically alone, without other human beings around. Deeper than that, it does not depend on being alone, but on being deeply rooted in our own hearts, in the center of our being fully present with ourselves. It is standing in who we are and staying rooted there, taking our own seat and not being shoved off by circumstance, by what others think, or by what the world demands. Here in retreat, we can experience solitude even though we are surrounded by others. Even so, it is important to spend some time, a little time each day if possible, alone, with no one else around, without phones, voicemail, email, TV, social media, movies, computers, etc. Solitude creates space and makes silence possible. Within solitude, we discover silence. To be aware, to be awake, we must be still. Number 2 is to reinforce your faith and challenge your addiction to worry. To start talking about this point, I want to read another quote that I found from a different Buddhist article that I was reading online, another one in which I'll leave the link down below for you. But it said, "Faith is an antidote to doubt." I absolutely love that. Faith is an antidote to doubt, a deeply debilitating quality in our life. With faith comes inspiration. With faith comes motivation. With faith comes devotion. With faith comes a clear sense of direction, of what is important and what's maybe not so important. And ultimately, that faith is in ourselves, in our capacity to hold and embrace all things. It's something we can trust in, and we can trust in its wholesomeness. Such trust leads to happiness and to understanding. This is important because through fortifying our sense of faith, we lose this complicated relationship that this world builds us with anxiety and worry. Again, if they can keep us in a heightened state of constant anxiety and worry, and we cannot return to stillness, or they make us feel like we can't return to solitude with ourselves, they have power over us. We have lost our autonomy. Faith has always been one of my favorite words because the word is so powerful. Faith is truly, in my opinion, the groundwork for anything. It is like the core of everything that we are. To move in any direction with complete confidence, I think you must have faith. I used to have a necklace that even said faith, and I'm pretty sure I wore it in some of my earliest astrology videos on this channel. But I think this world, again, we tend to use faith in a way that is not truly what faith is. We put our quote unquote faith, but it's a false sense of faith, into individuals, into humans that are imperfect. We lose our sense of faith in oneness, in wholeness, in the universe, in God. That is what we need to reinforce, is that connection to our faith in something greater in ourselves that is at play. It's only with this faith that we can actually move with true confidence when the world makes us question our confidence, makes us question ourselves, makes us lose ourselves. What we can always and forever hold on to is that inner sense of faith. We have a world that heavily values the mind over the spirit. The mind and the spirit are both important, but the problem is when we're too much in the mind, we start to ruminate so much that we almost lose our lives ruminating. We think so hard about what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. We think so hard about this political party versus that political party and this and that. And some of these things, yes, they may be relevant to the society we live in, the world we live in, and they may be important to take into consideration. But when you are so far removed from your faith, from your spirit, that you are so far into the mind, you start to ruminate on these things that do not actually have as much power as your connection to yourself does. Again, it goes back to removing you from your spirit and creating that spiritual warfare that removes you from your sense of faith. a popular thing people will think in times like this is that there must be no higher power. There must be no oneness and no God because this world is so evil. That is exactly the type of thinking this world endorses so that way you lose your power. Do not let it win. Reinforce your sense of faith. This will look different for everybody, but beginning with solitude, stillness practices such as meditation are ways to get back in touch with the core of your soul and your spirit and connected back to the sense of faith that will keep you fortified even when everything around you may feel like it's crumbling. Lastly, and this is the most important one arguably, is to anchor back into character, not identity. Our world is so focused on identity. What is your job title? How much do you make? What political party do you belong to? What race are you? What sexual orientation are you? The list goes on. We have become so hyper labeled in the current social climate that it has not only become exhausting, but it has further removed us from what actually matters. And it has actually increased division among parties rather than inclusion. The reason for this is everyone is so focused on an identity, how they appear, how we appear, what we can tell people we are, what people can see that we are, versus what the character of that person actually is. I heavily believe that we cannot see true change in the world, true, everlasting, permanent change, if we are unable to really place a focus on human character versus labels and identities. I've recently been reading this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I don't know. It might be Covey. I'm not sure. But he mentioned something early on in the book called the character ethics versus the personality ethics. And basically, he's making the point that our world started to prefer the personality ethic after, I think, World War I versus the character ethic. And the personality ethic prioritizes, again, our external labels, how we tend to come off, kind of more about our image rather than who we actually are. The character ethic focuses on our values, such as integrity, humility, whereas the personality ethic is more focused on behavior, skills, outward things that don't actually have anything to do with who you actually are and the foundation of who you are. And when I read this, all the fireworks went off. The lights all went off in my brain because I said, wow, this is really the direction the world has moved into. We refuse to acknowledge someone's character before their outward identity or their labels. Now, I've been kind of afraid to say this because it can easily offend somebody, who knows. But as someone myself who was born into a nuanced situation, meaning I was born in a biracial household, I experienced 2 different races growing up in the household. I experienced 2 sides of existence. And then after that, so many situations in my life revolved around the duality of human. Living in California, being born and raised in California, one of the most progressive liberal places in the US, and then living in the South, in the deep South, and experiencing one of the most conservative places in the United States, and getting to meet people from so many walks of life because of where my life has led me up to this point. And one thing I have learned is that we are making a mistake in judging someone's outward label before their character. Humans, all of us, myself included, become easily misguided, easily misled, easily make mistakes. It's part of being human. We are so imperfect. And to automatically demonize somebody because they have made certain choices or they have been geared towards certain beliefs is just so wrong. And I don't care if that sounds ignorant, but it is so wrong, and it is one of the number one places we are going wrong as a society, as a race of humans. We want to, before we even know somebody's actual values and who they actually are and their character as a human, we immediately want to know what political party are they part of? Who did they vote for? What label do they give themselves? Like, what race are they? I can't tell what race they are. And it's just, we're so bothered by that. And that is so incredibly toxic. And it is one of the prime contributors to why we have ended up in such a divided state, and why that divided energy has been able to be so fed and so emphasized that we are now experiencing certain physical manifestations to the extreme of that energy. I'm not saying that the total course of this world, that us on an individual level are completely to blame, but I do feel that this is so important. It needs to be said. It needs to be heard by whoever is listening to this. If you have found yourself getting caught up in the division that our world is promoting, ask yourself, constantly get yourself back into the routine of saying, am I judging this person's outward identity, outward personality, or am I judging them as a human, their character as a human being? I have met some of the most loving, kindest people from both political factions, from every race. And I have met some of the worst people from both factions, from every race and every walk of life. We need to return to thinking about the character ethic versus the personality ethic, point blank, period. With all that being said, don't let the world make you think that you need to become someone new constantly, or pursue something outside of yourself, or listen to voices and noise outside of yourself to feel worthy, to feel safe, included, or like your existence is meaningful. Sometimes, oftentimes, the most powerful form of transformation is returning to the core of who you are and knowing who you are. Not only is that the most powerful way to actually transform and lead a life that is meaningful, but it's the most powerful way that you remain autonomous and not easily manipulated in the state of affairs that we're experiencing. If this resonated, please be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment down below about how you're feeling. How are we all doing? This is a safe space where we can talk about it. And if anything resonated in this video with you, you are not alone. I am so grateful that you're here, and my heart is with you. Thank you so much again for being here. I'll see you in the next video. Adios.